So ultimately, I had to ditch my car and I took a metro. So I don't know, I have some traffic jam on the way. No, the entire India Gate, Pragati Maidan, some conference is going on. So all the roads are blocked. So sorry for that. Okay. I guess in the last class, we completed the topic of employment, right? Okay. So you can write down the list of topics. List of topics. First one, brief overview of Indian agriculture. We'll come to that. No, not a brief overview of Indian agriculture. Second one is irrigation system in India. Second one is irrigation system in India. Third, groundwater crisis. Groundwater crisis. Micro irrigation. Agricultural subsidies. Agricultural subsidies. Then fertilizer subsidy regime. Fertilizer subsidy regime in India. How many have written? To that, you can add one more, participatory irrigation management. Participatory irrigation management. Participatory irrigation management. Just give me a minute. Okay, so when we started our discussion, right? So we started our discussion with respect to growth and development. So we have covered the theme of growth and development and also the theme of employment. So with respect to employment, there's one particular topic which is pending, which is about the labor reforms. We'll come back to labor reforms later, about the labor codes. In today's class, I have planned to start with your most important theme for the mains examination, which is the theme of Indian agriculture. Okay, so there are basically some 3 to 4 topics which are very important. One is Indian agriculture. Second one is the topic of food processing industries. Then the topic of land reforms. So we will cover the most important topics and then we will take up the topics of budgeting and inclusive growth at a later stage. So today's class will starting with the theme of agriculture. I hope all of you must have seen the syllabus for agriculture, right? So this is the syllabus which is mentioned for agriculture. Okay. When I started my class, right, I told you the weightage of Indian agriculture. So I told you in GS paper 3, you get almost 100 marks from Indian economy. And out of that 100 marks, for sure 50 marks, you will get it from Indian agriculture only. So this is why we are going to pick up this particular theme before and then we'll go to the other not so important themes later. Now, this is the syllabus which is mentioned. Now, if you look at this syllabus, right, how should you prepare for this particular syllabus for agriculture? When you see this particular syllabus line, right, there are some topics from where in the previous year mains, direct questions have been asked directly. For example, there is a line mentioned in the syllabus. From that particular line, a direct question has been asked. For example, you have this particular line mentioned, which is MSP. So, in the previous year mains, there was a question on how does MSP rescue the farmers from low income trap? This was the question asked. Same way, you have this topic of direct and indirect farm subsidies. From here, twice questions have been asked. One question was about what are the different types of subsidies and what kind of distortions do they create. That is one. And second is, once again, what are the different types of subsidies? And second part of that question was, discuss the issues raised by WTO with respect to agricultural subsidies. Anyone knows what are the issues raised by WTO with respect to agriculture subsidies? Anyone? So basically we are giving subsidies over and above the 10% limit specified under agreement on agriculture. So this was a question which was asked in previous year mains. Similarly, questions have been asked directly with respect to what are the challenges in the irrigation systems of India. So when you look at this part of the syllabus from where direct questions are asked, what you should do to prepare for such direct questions, for every line mentioned in your syllabus, you should have your proper notes ready for every line mentioned. For example, let's say farm and direct and indirect subsidies, MSP, irrigation system, marketing of agriculture produce. There's second type of questions from agriculture, and these questions are actually not direct questions, they are actually indirect questions. Example of that is, anyone knows what question was asked in mains 2025 with respect to cropping pattern? What are the factors affecting the selection of high value crops in India? Factors which the farmers will decide, the farmers will take into consideration to grow the high value crops. And what are high value crops, by the way? Horticultural products, right? Apart from that, in the previous year mains, I guess it was mains 2023, the question was how changes in marketing and changes in consumption, how changes in marketing conditions and how changes in consumption is affecting the cropping pattern in India. For example, with respect to consumption, one example which I can think of is, these days people are demanding for more organic products, right? So that is why you must have heard the government has come up with a scheme to promote natural farming. So that is how cropping pattern is getting changed based upon what factor? Consumption. Similarly, there are some agricultural commodities which are exported based upon consumption, right? So based upon certain commodities which are exported, farmers are growing such commodities. Can you give me an example of that? Dragon fruit, very good. Then floriculture, flowers, right? So that was a question which was asked. When you see this line mentioned in the syllabus, cropping pattern in various parts of country, you must understand that you cannot get a direct question from this cropping pattern. It's more of indirect question. So if you prepare for this topic, let's say by knowing ki what area is under rice or what area is under wheat, what area is under sugarcane, that is not going to help you. Because this part of the syllabus, I would say, requires more analysis. समझ में आया? Okay. So for such kind of indirect questions, what you should do, whatever syllabus is mentioned by UPSC, that syllabus you have to link it to the current affairs. I hope you understood this. So number one, for every line mentioned in the syllabus, you need to have proper notes ready. And for some topics, you should link it to the current affairs. Example of which is, let's talk about marketing of agriculture produce. Can you tell me some important current developments with respect to marketing? One is ENAM. Is ENAM mentioned anywhere in the syllabus? It is not, but it is an important part of marketing. Then PM Asha. Then और सोचो. We are organizing the farmers into what is called as FPOs, Farmer Producer Organizations. Recently, Prime Minister Modi has declared that we have established 10,000 FPOs in India. So that topic of FPOs become important. Same way, look at this topic, economics of animal rearing. One of the most important current development with respect to animal rearing is, number one, last year, Government of India has launched White Revolution 2.0. White Revolution is with respect to what? Milk. So second version of White Revolution has been launched last year. Apart from that, if you've been reading newspaper, just today itself, Niti Aayog has published a policy as to how we should promote the fisheries sector. Have you come across this news article today? So this becomes important. So what we will be doing in this particular theme is, obviously we'll be covering the entire static part, but wherever it is relevant, I will also integrate current affairs, wherever it is possible for me. Okay, like in today's class, we are covering the topic of subsidies. But when I'm covering the topic of subsidies, I'm also going to take up the topic of fertilizer subsidy. Why is fertilizer subsidy in news? Anyone? You're not reading newspapers? Ukraine war to purana hai na? I'm saying presently, last month, what happened? Last month, there was an acute shortage of urea. There was a huge shortage of urea in the market, where it was being said that the farmers were waiting in long queues to get urea. So there was acute shortage of urea. In that context, the topic of fertilizer subsidy has become important. Okay. So wherever possible, I'll be integrating current affairs. Now, what I've done with respect to your different themes mentioned, I have incorporated the PYQs on different themes. Like for cropping pattern, these are your PYQs. Just take your time. Just look at all the PYQs. I told you about this. I told you about this. Changes in cropping pattern. And look at this question. It is a question on millets. Why was millets asked? Because the year 2023 was declared as International Year of Millets. Which means just 2 days back, Prime Minister Modi has launched a new mission. Mission for Atmanirbharta in pulses. That topic becomes important. समझ में आया, everyone? Look at this, different types of irrigation systems. With respect to this topic, these are your PYQs. Look at this one, factors responsible for groundwater crisis. Challenges faced by Indian irrigation system. This is about micro irrigation. This is about storage, transport, and marketing of agricultural produce. Look at all the PYQs here. Look at this question. what are the main bottlenecks in upstream and downstream process of marketing of agricultural products. All the people who are preparing for mains, right, they generally study this topic of what are the challenges in terms of marketing of agricultural products. But UPSC did not ask you questions on the direct challenges. Rather, what UPSC has asked is what are the challenges in upstream as well as downstream. Is upstream and downstream, is it mentioned in any part of your syllabus? कहीं पे mentioned है syllabus में? You not seen the syllabus? It is mentioned in the food processing industries. It is directly mentioned upstream and downstream activities in marketing of agricultural produce. So what UPSC has done, it has linked the topic of food processing to the topic of what? Agriculture marketing. Two topics it has interlinked. So suppose, for example, just as an example, let's say you don't know what is upstream and you don't know what is downstream. What should you do in that particular case? क्या करना है? If you don't know upstream and downstream, in that particular case, what you should simply do is you should write upstream and downstream challenges in marketing of agricultural products without delineating the upstream challenges and the downstream challenges. Understand, you should never leave a question blank because this is actually a 15 marker question. Same way, you can see this question. E-technology in the aid of farmers. Direct question. E-technology in production and marketing. There's a current affairs topics related to this. The current affairs topic is we have digital agriculture mission. Some of you must have heard about the concept of AgriStack. As part of AgriStack, we are going to assign a unique ID to every farmer in India. So that is related to this e-technology. Now this is what is about direct and indirect subsidies. I told you, na, direct question, mains 2023 and mains 2013. Can you see the questions are almost same, but the second part of the question is different. There the question is very specific to issues raised by WTO, and here the question is very broad based as to what are the distortions created by agricultural subsidies. Look at this, technology missions. With respect to technology missions, you had National Horticulture Mission, you had different types of revolution. One, you know, we have green revolution. Second, we have white revolution. Then blue revolution. Have you heard of yellow revolution? Yellow revolution is for oil seeds. So you have to mention about all the revolutions which have taken place in agriculture. And you can see, so far in the last 10 years, only one question has been asked on this economics of animal rearing. Only one question has been asked. So keeping this in mind, the first topic of our discussion today is about brief overview of Indian agriculture. Okay, so please make the heading, brief overview of agriculture. Okay, here, while discussing the topic of Indian agriculture, I will be using a lot of data, a lot of facts, a lot of figures. And do not worry about it, because like the way I've been doing so far, whenever I discuss the data, right, I'll be repeating the data so many times that by the end of the class, you will be able to remember the data. But for your ready reference, which you can use it just before the mains examination, this is a fact sheet about agriculture. Generally, you don't find all the facts, data at one particular place. So I put all the facts related to agriculture in one single page. And if you're thinking, bas itna hi hai, nahi. There's one more page as well. And I will keep adding to this as well. Do not worry. So I will share as of today these two fact sheet. Ensure that it is part of your notes. How you want to incorporate this as part of your notes, completely up to you. You can leave some space for facts and add it in a separate table, or you can take a printout of this and put it in your notes. And whenever you read newspaper, any source from where you get additional fact, right, you can add those facts to this particular page. समझ में आया? Now some people might have this doubt as well. This data is as of 2024 or 2025. So you might have this doubt, sir मैं तो next year mains लिख रहा हूँ 2026 में. How relevant is the data? You must understand the data related to agriculture mostly remains same. It does not changes. It does not change, I would say, for at least until next 3 to 4 years, for sure. No dramatic changes are going to take place in agriculture. For next 3 to 4 years, the data is going to remain the same. So it means whatever data which you are going to study now will be relevant for next 2 to 3 years. And next 2 to 3 years में एग्जाम क्लियर करके निकलना है, ताकि नया डेटा पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं पड़े. So this is an added incentive for you to clear the exam much faster. Understood? Okay. So we'll start with a brief overview of the agriculture. Okay. What is the contribution of agriculture sector to GDP? GDP. 17 to 18%. And what is its contribution to employment? 46. Revise karna hai day to day, right? Earlier, last decade, it used to be like 58. From 58, now it got reduced to 45. And then 45 to it has increased to 46, right? So let's write that. Agriculture accounts for 18% of GDP and 46% of the employment. And 46% of employment. Okay, now just pay attention. In the year 2016, the government that time, it came up with a grand vision, an ambitious vision to double the farmers' income, right? And for doubling farmers' income, what we did is we looked into the average income of the farmers in different states. Let's say you have state X, Y, Z, and average income of the farmers in each of the states. And then we said we want to double the farmers' income. So when I say doubling farmers' income, can I say it's mostly state specific? Because the target is state specific. For every state, the target would be different. But at the same time, if I take into account average income of the farmers, this average income of the farmers by 2022, this average income should have got doubled. Average income. There was a committee which was appointed by the government. That committee is called as Dalwai Panel on Doubling Farmers' Income. This committee then set on the targets with respect to how much the farmers' income should increase or double in each of the states. At the same time, at an all India level, to what extent it should get doubled. And that data for 2022 at an all India level it was supposed to increase to 1,72,694. If it is possible to remember the entire data, remember it, or else remember at least the approximate data. Approximate data could be 1,70,000. Okay? So far, government has not carried out any detailed study as to what extent the income of the farmers increased by 2022. There is no official study, but there is a think tank called as India International Center. This think tank has carried out a detailed study of the farmers' income in India. After carrying out a detailed study, it has highlighted that unfortunately the government could not meet this target of doubling the farmers' income. And it went on to estimate what is the average income of the farmers in 2022. This average income was actually 1,30,000. And this 1,30,000 is actually 25% lower than our target. Almost 25 to 30% lower than this target. Samajh mein aaya? Okay. But one good thing which this particular think tank has highlighted is across India, only 2 states were able to achieve the target of doubling farmers' income. Only 2 states. कौन से states हैं? Take a guess. Karnataka? नहीं. One state, Bihar, and the second state is Uttarakhand. Only these 2 states were able to double their farmers' income. But understand, when I said that farmers' income in these states has doubled, it has not doubled to this value. It has doubled based upon the base. What is the base? 2016. As compared to that, it has doubled. But does not mean that an average farmer in Bihar or Uttarakhand is earning 1,72,000. Further, it has gone on to highlight that there is huge regional disparity in terms of income of the farmers. For example, it has highlighted that a farmer in Punjab and Haryana earns at least twice the income of the farmer in, let's say, Bihar and West Bengal. Almost double. So there is huge interstate disparity in the income of the farmers. समझ में आया? Why should you know this data? Reason number 1. Let's say you may get a direct question on what are the challenges in doubling farmers' income. If you want to write the challenges to doubling farmers' income, the most important thing you should do is you should highlight what is the present status. So that is where this thing will come into being. Second, this particular data, you can use it as a fodder point across all the questions related to agriculture. I hope it's clear, everyone. So first thing you have mentioned, what is the status of agriculture, right? Second, as compared to this value, no, it should be 25 to 30. Now just try to calculate how much it should be. 25 to 30 आएगा. Just do it. Work it. 42 ज़्यादा है ना? I'll discuss later. But it is for sure 25 to 30% कम है. It's like saying कि 1,72,000 से कितना कम है ये? It's like 1,30,000. Work out, see that. It will come to be this much. Okay, next, right. Progress on doubling farmers' income. Progress on doubling farmers' income. Progress on doubling farmers' income. Under that, you can write the government had certain target. The government had certain target to double the farmers' income. The government had set the target to double the farmers' income to 1,72,694. 1,72,694 by end of 2022. Full stop. However, the average income of the farmers, in 2022 was rupees 1,30,000, comma, which is 25 to 30% lower than the target. Which is 25 to 30% lower than the target. In the bracket, please quote that particular think tank which has given this particular data, because there's no official data for this, and this think tank is India International Center. India International Center. Okay, full stop. Further, only two states, put a hyphen and write Bihar and Uttarakhand. Only two states, Bihar and Uttarakhand, have been able to meet the target of doubling farmers' income. Have been able to meet the target of doubling the farmers' income. Okay. Next, right, present status on income of the farmers. Present status on the income of the farmers. Okay, just pay attention now. Okay, here NABARD publishes a report called as All India Rural Financial Inclusion Survey Report. This report is for the year 21-22. But the report, as you can see, when was it published? It was published in October 2024. It's the latest data. In this particular report, NABARD highlights as to what is the average income of an agricultural household. Understand, we are not talking about average income of a farmer. We are talking about average income of a agricultural household. How much do you think it is in India? कितना हो सकता है? 8,000? Okay, if you see the average income of the agricultural household right now, it is 13,661. This is the average income of the agricultural household. On an average, an agricultural family will earn around 13,000. If you're not being able to still understand this, assuming that a family has 5 members, so you can divide 13 by 5, which means what do you think is the per capita income? कितना आएगा? Somewhere around 2.5 के आसपास, right? That much is the average income of a farmer in India. Not just that, this particular report has highlighted as to what are the sources of income of this agricultural household. Out of this 13,661, they earn just 4,476 from what? From cultivation. From agriculture, they are earning just 33% of their overall income. And over a period of time, can you see, they have more dependent upon wages, that is labor, or they are more dependent upon employment in the government or private sector. The income which they are earning from agriculture is actually very less, which goes on to show that agriculture is no longer a viable profession for a lot of people in India because they're not earning good amount of money. Clear with that? So, right, the average income of agricultural household, the average income of agricultural household is around 13,661, is around 13,661, out of which share of agricultural income is rupees 4,476. Share of agricultural income is rupees 4,476 in the bracket 33%. Samaya? Okay. So this is some data which you can use it. Now in mains, what questions can be asked? You can just see here. One question which can be asked is, what do you mean by total factor productivity in agriculture? And the government's vision of doubling farmers' income cannot be realized without enhancing TFP. I hope you are able to understand. TFP we have covered in the previous class. What is TFP? It basically tells us the efficiency with which we utilize the inputs. And here we are talking about which inputs? Agricultural inputs like land, water, labor, fertilizers, electricity, seeds, etc. So the question says that we are using a lot of inputs, but the output of agriculture is considerably less. And this is being attributed to the Green Revolution. You know, what has Green Revolution done? Green Revolution has made the Indian agriculture more input intensive. We're using more inputs, but the productivity or the output of agriculture is not that high in line with the overall inputs. Second question is, doubling farmers' income is crucial for achieving the vision of Viksit Bharat, argue. Why should we double farmers' income to become Viksit Bharat? 1 point हो गया वहां पे. Then? Huh? Okay, then I want you guys to tell me कि अगर farmers income increases, then this will help us increase our GDP growth. How do you establish a direct linkage between the two? One is consumption, good. Second, more savings will lead to investment will lead to GDP. Getting that point? If you have gone through this year's budget, right? In this year's budget, the finance minister has declared agriculture sector as the first engine of growth of Indian economy. When I say first engine of growth means if India has to become Viksit Bharat, which should be the primary driver of Indian economy? Agriculture. समझ में आया? So that is how you need to link it. We'll come to that question. Second, what do you think are the challenges in doubling farmers' income? Low TFP, then fragmented land, dependency on monsoon, good. You say something? Okay. Okay, legal cases, you say something? Okay. Skewed cropping pattern. So what we are going to do now in the next half an hour we are going to have a bird's eye view of the entire Indian agriculture. Bird's eye view. When I say bird's eye view, we are not going to take a deep dive into any topic. We're just going to have a macro view of the entire Indian agriculture. Once we have a macro view, then we'll start taking a deep dive into each of the topics. So here we'll start with the challenges in doubling farmers' income. Okay, so brief overview. Write the heading, bird's eye view of agriculture. Bird's eye view of agriculture. Okay. With respect to bird's eye view, let's start with the first one. And please understand, I will be using a lot of data while discussing this. Do not worry about the data, because as we progress in the class, you will be recalling the data multiple times. So let's start with the first factor of production in agriculture, which is land. So with respect to land, if you see the present status, what is the total geographical area of India in terms of hectares? In geography, you must have studied this. 326 million hectare, not 3.26. 3.26 is very less that way. So it is 326 million hectare. That is the total geographical area of India. Under that, if you see the area under cultivation, it is called as net sown area. This net sown area in agriculture is around 141 million hectare. What do you think may have happened to this net sown area in the last 2 decades? Sorry? Increased or decreased? How many of you think it has increased? 1, 2. How many of you think it has decreased? Anyone thinks it has remained stagnant in the last 2 decades? It has remained stagnant in the last 2 decades. It has neither increased nor decreased in the last 2 decades. It has remained same, 141 million hectare. This is net sown area. But here, if I could tell you the biggest problem in terms of land, the farmers in India, based upon the ownership, they can be categorized into marginal, small, medium, and large farmers. Marginal farmers means they own less than 1 hectare, small 1 to 2 hectare, medium 2 to 4, large more than 4, based upon the ownership. The majority of the farmers in India are actually small and marginal. So the problem here is, if you see the small and marginal farmers, yes, they account for 86% of the farmers in India, and they own 48% of the agricultural land, which basically means almost half of our net sown area is fragmented. So the biggest problem here is And if this is fragmented land holding, it has multiple repercussions, multiple problems. Problem number one is these farmers do not have access to inputs. The most critical input which they do not have access to is actually credit. Hmm. Kab? No, that is different. Here it's not just about it's water. Water we covered. Fertilizers. So they do not have access to inputs. Then they have low yield. And third, generally these farmers, if they try to sell the agriculture produce in the market, most likely they'll get less prices, lower price, because they are mostly exploited by the middlemen and the traders. So what do you think is the solution to this problem? क्या करना चाहिए हमें? No, not cloud direct. Something which is directly able to solve the structural problem. I think the most important thing here is we have to organize farmers into FPOs, farmer producer organizations. Did I mention about Sahyadri FPO in the class anytime? I'm not. Okay. So there is an example of a FPO. It is called as Sahyadri FPO. Okay. What happens in a farmer producer organization is, let's say we all are farmers and we come together, form a FPO, and all of us will grow a common crop. Let's say a common crop like tomato. If you're growing a common crop, can I say everyone needs a same input like seeds, fertilizers, and so on? So when we purchase inputs, we are not purchasing inputs in small quantities. We are purchasing inputs in the large quantities. What will happen is, if you purchase inputs in large quantities, we can bargain and get the inputs at a lesser price. Same way, as farmers who are part of FPOs, we can buy agricultural machineries. By buying agriculture machineries or high yielding variety of seeds, we can increase our yield. And after growing tomato, instead of individually selling the tomato in the market, we can aggregate tomato in one particular place. What will happen to marketable surplus in that case? Higher. And if you try to sell that marketable surplus in the market, we'll have more bargaining power. And that bargaining power will help us fetch much higher price. Not just that, in fact, we don't have to even sell the tomato also. What we can do, that tomato we can process it into, let's say, ketchup. We can do value addition and then sell that ketchup in the market, and we are going to get a much higher price as compared to the price that we can get for tomato. One such biggest example is Sahyadri FPO. You can just see here. What happened? Next to? Okay. Okay, so this is a FPO which is based in the Nasik district of Maharashtra. And can you see what it is? It is India's largest integrated fruits and vegetables ka value chain. And if I could show you the products which they are selling, processed food, can you see the processed food which this FPO is selling? It's a farmer company. It's a company owned by farmers, and they have their own tomato ketchup. They have their own tomato soup. They have their own, you know, different pulps, mango pulp, guava pulp, apple. Can I say when they do the value addition, they're going to get a much higher price on that. The dependence on the market will drastically reduce. So this is what we need to do. We need to organize farmers into FPOs. Apart from that, what we must also do is we must modernize the land records. Why it is important is if you modernize land records, farmers will get easy access to credit. Okay. And third is we must legalize tenancy in agricultural land. Tenancy. If you don't know what is tenancy, we'll cover that in the topic of land reforms. Legalize tenancy. So this is what we must do as far as this factor of production is concerned. Like I said, ye kya hai? Bird's eye view. We have a separate theme of land reforms. When I take up land reforms, we'll take a deep dive into this topic of land. Let's move to the next factor. The next factor is water. Next factor is water. With respect to water, if you see the present status here is agriculture. It utilizes almost 85% of the water in India. Almost 85% of the water is used by agriculture. And within agriculture, here, if you look at the area under irrigation, irrigated area, how much is the net sown area? Net sown area, 141. So if you look at irrigated area, this irrigated area is around 78 million hectare, which is somewhere around 52%. 52% of our net sown area is under irrigation. Until 2 years back, this used to be around 48%. But recently, Niti Aayog has said it has increased from 48 to 52. Getting it? Okay. But what is the problem here? The problem, if I could tell you, is even now, the rain-fed area accounts for almost 48% of the net sown area. Area under rain-fed agriculture, 48%. 52 to 55. I said 55? No, it is 52. It is not 55, it is 52. It is 52% of the net sown area. How much? No. I think it is, sorry, just check it. I think it should be 73. Just change it. It should be 73 million hectares. 73. 52% of the net sown area. Okay, so this is problem number 1. Problem number 2 is recently Niti Aayog has published a report called as composite water management index report. Write the full form: composite water management index report. According to this report, it has gone on to highlight that India is presently facing its worst water crisis in the history. Worst water crisis in the history, because agriculture sector is using more water than what it requires. Okay. Worst water crisis. Apart from that, within agriculture, you can use surface water, or you can use the groundwater, either surface water or groundwater. When you see surface water right now, it accounts for 40% and groundwater accounts for 60%. So within agriculture, what are we using more? We are using more of groundwater. And it is being said that India is the largest extractor of the groundwater. Largest extractor of groundwater. That is why in this year mains, there was a question on the groundwater crisis. Okay. So what do you think is the solution to this problem? क्या करना चाहिए? Rain-fed area, what should we do? We should focus on rain water harvesting. That's the first thing. And what we must also do is we must adopt micro irrigation. So this is with respect to water. ठीक है? Can you see that agriculture sector is using more water than what it needs? Like you can see, just 52% of our net zone area is irrigated. And in that particular area, we are using more water, which goes on to show that the total factor productivity in terms of water is very less. Same can be said about land also. It is utilizing more land, but the yield of the land is less because it is fragmented. Next is about credit. Next is about credit. Okay. If you see the present status of credit, you have farmers. Farmers can take loans from institutionals, as well as farmers can have access to non-institutional loans. When I say institutional loans, means they are taking loans from banks, NBFCs, cooperatives, and so on. Non-institutional means they are taking loan from money lenders. Whose share is higher? India has come a long way. You think it is non-institutional. India is no longer in 1970s. Understand? This is what I wanted to say. आपको क्या लगता है इंडिया अभी भी 1970s में है? The share of institutional loans is now 72% as per the latest budget. And the share of non-institutional loans is around 28%. So this is the present status. Okay, but if I could tell you the problem in terms of credit. Number one, when you say loans, right? Loans can be taken for short term, and loans can also be taken for long term. Short term versus long term. Short term loans are basically the loans which the farmers will take for growing of crop loans. Long term loans are basically the loans which are taken for making long term investment. Long term investment like purchase of machineries. The problem right now, even though the share of institutional credit is higher, the biggest problem is the share of short term loans is higher and long term loans is lower. Any idea why? One is interest, then it's the other way, na? Mechanization less means it's the other way. Have you heard of KCC, Kisan Credit Card? In Kisan Credit Card, if the farmer takes a short-term loan, on short-term loan, they get interest rate subvention. Interest rate subvention means they get subsidy on interest rate, provided they take what kind of loans? Short-term. They don't get subsidy on taking long-term loans. So, जिस पे subsidy मिलता है, they'll take more of that loan, which is more of short. Okay, we'll come to that credit separately. Apart from that, if you look at small and marginal farmers, these farmers account for 86% of the farmers, but they get only 57% of the institutional credit. Only 57% of the institutional credit. When you say bank, right? Bank has a choice to give loan to a small and marginal farmer and a large farmer. If they give loan to a small and marginal farmer, because the yield of the small and marginal farms is very less, there's a higher chance that a small and marginal farmer may default on repayment of loans. Risk is high. Huh? Obviously, they can deny. It's up to the bank ना कि किसको loan देना है. It's up to the bank whether they want to give loan to a farmer or not. Huh? You said something? Okay. It's up to the bank whether they want to give the loans or not. Farmers don't have a right to get loans, understand? हाँ, but banks वो उनको देते ही नहीं ना. If you apply, let's say if you are a large farmer and if I also apply, small and marginal farmer, banks will give more loans to large farmers any day. Understand that? Okay. Is this part clear? Okay. So obviously the solution here is number one, we must increase the share of long-term loans, and second is make the credit has to become more inclusive. Credit should become more inclusive. So that is with respect to credit. Okay. Sorry? We are not just talking about small and marginal farmer. We are saying in general, long-term loans should be promoted among the farmers because long-term loans will help address the structural problems of agriculture, like mechanization or improving the productivity of the land. Short-term loans is more of short-term. You're just using it for consumption, right? To grow crops. That is not going to help us in the long run. Okay. The next one is with respect to capital. And please mark this as very important, capital. With respect to capital. Okay. Here, with respect to capital, present status, if you see with respect to capital, this capital into agriculture can come in basically two ways. One, we can get capital in the form of GCF, which is gross capital formation. It's an investment. And the capital can also come into agriculture in the form of what? Subsidies. Can you give me some examples of GCF in agriculture? Good. One is, I can say, use of more machines. Good. Second example. Expanding the area under irrigation. Good. Construction of more canals. Good. Something which you think is long-term investment in agriculture. और क्या हो सकता है? Huh? Otherwise, it's part of machines only. Can I say research and development to develop new varieties of seeds? Or let's say development of cold chain infrastructure, or developing more mandis where the farmer can sell their produce. And good, very good. Agricultural extension like KVKs, Krishi Vigyan Kendras. Good. हाँ, चलो ठीक है, but you understood ना what is GCF, right? So GCF and subsidies. Subsidies का examples देखते हैं. One biggest subsidy is MSP, or you must have heard about PM Kisan, or we have electricity subsidy, fertilizer subsidy. These are some of the subsidies given to our farmers. Okay. Now see this GCF. This GCF right now, as per the last year's budget, this GCF is 20% of agricultural GDP. Understand, we are not expressing this as percentage of India's GDP. We are expressing this as percentage of agricultural GDP. Can you tell me what is the investment rate of Indian economy? GCF in India, kitna hai? 30%, 32%, right? It's around 32%. In Indian economy, the investment is around 30 to 32%. But in agriculture, how much is that investment? 20%. So obviously, we are making less investment in agriculture as percentage of agriculture GDP. Getting that point? आप कुछ सोच रहे हो? I'm saying investment rate as percentage of India's GDP is around 30%. But investment rate in agriculture as percentage of agriculture GDP is just 20%. So we are not spending enough money on these things. But this GCF in agriculture, this can come from private sector also, and it can come from the public sector also. When I say public sector, means government making investment, or a private sector can construct a mandi, a private sector can invest in research and development, a private sector can adopt machines, like farmer buying machines from his own pocket. Between these two, किसका शेयर ज्यादा लगता है आपको? Sorry. This share is higher, and public investment in GCF is lower. So majority of heavy lifting in terms of investment is actually done by the private sector. Government investment is very less. You know, until 3 years back, the economic survey used to show us a breakup कि public का कितना है and private का कितना है until 2 to 3 years back in the economic survey. Last year's economic survey has highlighted that this GCF, which was earlier 15%, from 15% it has increased to 20%. It has said only this much. But I wanted the data कि इसमें से out of 20% how much is public and how much is private. That data has not been given in the economic survey for obvious reasons, obviously, because किसका share ज़्यादा है? Private का ज़्यादा. But what I can guess, even though it's not officially confirmed, what I can guess, last time when it was 15%, it used to be somewhere around 3%. Out of 15, 3% is public. बाकी का 12% किसका था? Private. So now what I can tell you is out of 20%, public का हो सकता है 5 and this could be around 15. But we don't know the official data, so I'm not writing anything. But I want you guys to compare, focus here with respect to government. Government is making investment in GCF also, and government is spending money on subsidies also. किसमें ज़्यादा spend कर रहा है government? Subsidies. So the problem here, the problem is that when the government spends money on GCF vis-a-vis subsidies, government is spending more on subsidies and less on GCF. What do you think is the reason? Vote bank politics. As simple as that. Normally, political parties do not think of long term. They have mostly a short term perspective of next 5 years. So, this thing, if you see, it is this subsidies is higher, GCF is lower. So, what is the solution to this? क्या करना चाहिए? What is that? Invest more in GCF, but पैसे कहाँ से आना चाहिए? Never ever use the word reduce subsidies. You'll be portrayed as an anti-poor. Never write that. Be more diplomatic. क्या लिखना है वहां पे? Rationalize subsidies. Instead of using the word reduce subsidies, use the word rationalize subsidies. दोनों का same है, but it's more diplomatic way of writing it. Rationalization of subsidies. And if you rationalize subsidies, what will happen is we will be able to save more money, and that savings that we can have, that we can divert towards gross capital formation. So this is with respect to capital. Fine so far? Everyone second down? Okay. Let's look at the next factor. The next factor is with respect to labor. The next factor is with respect to labor. With respect to labor, I have told you the present status. Agriculture sector accounts for 18% of GDP, but it employs 46% of India's workforce. So what is the problem in agriculture? It is the problem of disguised unemployment. So how do you think we should solve this problem? Yes? Yes, good. We must promote secondary agriculture. We must promote secondary agriculture. Next is with respect to fertilizer. With respect to fertilizer, if you see the present status here is India is the largest consumer and second largest producer of fertilizers. Largest consumer and second largest producer. But the problem here in India is when you see fertilizer subsidy in the Indian agriculture is basically given in two ways. One, we have urea subsidy, and the second one we call it as nutrient based subsidy. Write the full form: nutrient based subsidy. Urea subsidy and nutrient based subsidy. Urea subsidy is a source of nitrogen, whereas nutrient based subsidy is given for P and K fertilizer. P and K fertilizers, it is nutrient based subsidy. The problem here is the way we give subsidies for urea and P and K fertilizer, this in India is cheaper. Urea is cheaper, whereas P and K fertilizers, they are comparatively costly as compared to urea. So the problem which happens in India is ideal NPK ratio. You must have studied in school. कितना होना चाहिए ideal? 4:2:1. N4, P2 and 1. But in India, the NPK ratio is 7:3:1. 7:3:1, which clearly shows that the farmers are using more of nitrogen, which is quite understandable because nitrogen is much cheaper. इससे प्रॉब्लम क्या होता है? ग्राउंड वाटर नहीं. Can I say in the long run it is affecting the fertility of the soil because you're not using the fertilizers in the right balance. So right, affects the fertility of the soil. Affects the fertility of the soil. इसका क्या solution है? Do we have any scheme to promote balanced utilization of fertilizers? Soil health card. So right, promote balanced utilization of fertilizers. Promote balanced utilization of fertilizers through soil health card scheme. Okay. Next is with respect to cropping pattern. With respect to cropping pattern, the present status of cropping pattern is rice and wheat, rice and wheat account for, you can write down, account for 38% of area. Rice and wheat account for 38% of area and 75% of food grain production. 38% of area and 75% of the food grain production. Full stop. Only one crop is grown on more than, only one crop is grown on more than 50% of the area. Only one crop is grown on more than 50% of the area. So this is the present status. Problem is we are focusing more on rice and wheat, which means Indian agriculture has come to be characterized by monocropping. So which has led to more of, yes, import dependency. Which are the two crops which India imports? Pulses and oil seeds. Import dependency, put a hyphen and write 57% of edible oil, 50% of edible oil and 57% of edible oil and 14% of pulses. 14% of pulses are imported. Sorry, change it to 20. Change it to 20. Not 14, change it to 20. 20. And 20% of the pulses are imported. 14 is India's share in global imports, right? 20% of pulses. Last year it was 20%. So that is import dependency. So solution to this here is promote crop 20% of the domestic requirement. Promote crop diversification. That's the solution. Next is MSP. MSP, minimum support price. With respect to MSP, the present status is, you must have heard that MSP is announced for how many crops? 22 crops. For sugarcane, we don't have MSP. For sugarcane, we have FRP. So some people add sugarcane to this, so they say it is 23. But MSP is for 22 crops. MSP is announced for 22 crops. But the problem, if you see with respect to MSP, the biggest problem with respect to MSP is its low coverage. Coverage इसका बहुत ही कम है. For example, the procurement among all these 22 crops is limited to mainly rice and wheat, because rice and wheat is required to be distributed through PDS. So we procure more of rice and wheat. Second problem is only 6% of the farmers in India have got benefited from MSP. Only 6% of the farmers get benefited from MSP. In the bracket, write Shanta Kumar Committee. Shanta Kumar Committee. And when you say coverage, coverage wise, it is limited to only few states. Only few states have got benefited from MSP, which is basically the Green Revolution states like Punjab and Haryana. Punjab and Haryana. Okay. Next, if you see the yield of the Indian agriculture, the yield of Indian agriculture present status is low, and this is mainly due to use of traditional varieties of seeds. Use of traditional variety of seeds. Example, if you look at yield of pulses in India, the average yield of pulses is 881 kg per hectare, but at a global level, it is 1015 kg per hectare. Yield is considerably less. So obviously the solution here is to develop high yielding variety of seeds. Develop high yielding variety of seeds. Okay. So what we have basically done, we have just taken an overview of the entire agriculture. Like I said, this is a bird's eye view. What we will do one by one, we'll take a deep dive into each of these topics. Let's say when I take up land reforms, we'll take up this. In today's class, our focus is going to be on water, irrigation. We'll also take up credit. Subsidies is another topic that I'll be covering. Irrigation and subsidies is what we are going to cover today. Then mechanization, fertilizer also we'll cover today. Topping pattern next class. MSP also next class. Seeds also next class. So this is how we are going to cover this entire topic. Okay? I'm going to show you a question now. Okay, and next I'm still not done yet. Next part you can write. After you written all of this bird's eye view, no? Next you can write why double farmers income. Why double farmers income? Why double farmers income? Why should we double the farmers income? Okay. To make you understand why we should double farmers income, I've just incorporated this cycle. Just see the cycle. Right now, the income of the farmers is quite less. I told you it is on an average 13,661. Income is quite less. So they will not be able to make investment in agriculture. So overall productivity of agriculture will be less. So because they're getting less income, their socio-economic indicators like education, health, sanitation, housing, etc. will also be very poor. So that is why if you see India's ranking in terms of HDI is quite less. So at the same time, if their income is less, can I say that consumption expenditure will also be less? Lower consumption expenditure will lead to lower GDP growth. Lower GDP growth rate will further reinforce the income of the farmers. So that is why we have to double the farmers' income. Can you quickly incorporate this? You should incorporate this diagram if at all there's a question on doubling of farmers' income. If you're not able to see, I can read it out. Which part? Poor socioeconomic indicators. Poor socioeconomic indicators followed by lower demand for goods and services. Everyone a second now? Okay. Right now, way forward. Way forward slash strategies. Way forward slash strategies. Okay. As far as Indian agriculture is concerned, what you should do, you should always use this particular person's name, Dalwai Panel. So this person is actually, his full name is Mr. Ashok Dalwai. He was the chairperson of National Rain-Fed Authority. He was the chairperson of that. And this person has submitted a report on doubling the farmers' income. ठीक है? अगर if you want, you can forget your name. खुद का नाम भूल जाओ. But इनका नाम नहीं भूलना है. Because this person will help you fetch additional half marks in every question related to agriculture. If there is an opportunity to use his recommendation, use this recommendation. If there's no opportunity to use his recommendation, create an opportunity to use his recommendation. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? No matter what, इनका नाम पेपर में आना ही चाहिए in every answer related to agriculture. For example, in UPSC mains, take it for granted, you'll have one 10-marker question and one 15-marker question on agriculture, for sure. In both these, one 10-marker and another 15-marker, you should have his name. And this person has made a statement. That statement, if possible, you can use it in your answer wherever you find it relevant. So what I'm doing is, whenever I'm discussing a topic, right, I will bring his recommendations into each and every topic. Like we're talking about irrigation, we'll discuss his recommendations. If you talk about subsidies, we'll discuss his recommendation. If you're talking about mechanization, there also we'll discuss his recommendation. But there's one broad-based statement used by Dalwai Panel. Please write that. Agriculture should be treated as an enterprise. Agriculture should be treated as an enterprise, and farmer as an agripreneur. And farmer as an agripreneur. It's actually a combination of agri plus entrepreneur. So this word should be there. Okay, agripreneur. Okay, look at the word. He says agriculture should be treated as an enterprise. What do you mean by enterprise? See, if I could give an example of an enterprise, be it in agriculture, manufacturing, or services, if this enterprise has to be successful, has to be profitable, this enterprise should focus on basically three factors if it wants to become successful. Number one, whatever inputs it is getting, right? All these inputs it should be able to get at a lesser price. Second, once it gets the inputs, it should be able to convert those inputs into outputs very efficiently. Remember, we discussed the concept of TFP. TFP means less input plus more output. So number one, it should get the inputs at a lesser cost. Second, its TFP should be very less input, more output. And third, when it produces a product, right? Once it sells a product in the market, it should get a highest price for that particular product. So when he says agriculture should be treated as an enterprise, it means number one, farmers should get the inputs at a lesser price. Second, farmers should use less inputs to get more output. Example, instead of using flood irrigation method, we should shift towards micro irrigation. Did you understand this point? Similarly, when you look at credit, I told you there are two types of credit, short term credit and long term. Ideally, किसका ज़्यादा होना चाहिए? Long term credit. Same way, GCF versus subsidies, whose share should be higher? GCF. That point only. Less input, more output. And finally, when farmers sells the produce in the market, farmers should be able to get the best price. So continue. As an enterprise, comma, Indian agriculture must focus on three aspects. As an enterprise, Indian agriculture must focus on three aspects. Number one, lower input cost. Second, enhanced productivity. In the bracket, right? Less input, more output. And third, higher prices on sale of agricultural produce. Higher prices on sale of agriculture produce. Next line. Doubling farmers' income. Next line. Doubling farmers' income has both intrinsic and instrumental role. Doubling farmers' income has both intrinsic and instrumental role. Okay, just pay attention. I hope most of you know means versus ends. When I say means means if you focus on this, we can achieve something. When I say end is an objective in itself. When I say that doubling farmers' income is an intrinsic role, it means doubling farmers' income is an end in itself. Why it is an end? Because India is a welfare state. As a welfare state, we must double farmers' income. Second, doubling farmers' income has an instrumental role. Instrumental role means if you double farmers' income, it's a means to achieve some other end goal. Look at this diagram. If you double farmers income, क्या होगा? What will happen to our HDI value? HDI value will increase. What will happen to our GDP growth? Our GDP growth will increase. So if you double farmers income, number one, it can make our annadata, it can make our annadata atmanirbhar. And second, it can help us become Viksit Bharat. So you can use these kind of keywords like making Annadata Atmanirbhar. ठीक है? Fine. So this is a brief overview about the entire agriculture. Now based upon that, I want you guys to tell me the answer structure. That's it. I want only the answer structure. This is yours. What topic is this? Savings. Achha. Done? हाँ, but read the question carefully. How many parts the question has? You're done? एक second. So what do you think is the introduction? क्या लिखना है वहाँ पे? नहीं, but what is that line that you'll mention? वो actual statement भी तो चाहिए मुझे. What statement will you write? हाँ. No, there's no doubt about it. There's no yes and no here. It only says argue. When the word says argue, it means the statement is right. You just have to prove that statement is right. No. If the question is, do you think government vision of doubling farmers' income cannot be realized with enhancing total factor productivity, then it's debatable. It does not ask criticalness, or it does not ask, do you think? It makes a statement and it says argue. It means you have to explain that statement, or you have to give arguments in favor of that statement. Done? Good. Yeah. Yeah. Value addition, try to think of value addition points, everyone. I told you value addition points, the framework yaad hai? B, double C, D, E, F. Try to remember something from the budget, case studies, committees, diagram, facts. Try to add that value addition points. हाँ, add that value addition point and show it to me. Value addition point add करके आपने एक किया है? Okay. Okay, good. Validation points. Good. Huh. Good. Very good. See what she has done? The introduction is definition of what is TFP. I think that is very important. You should define what is total factor productivity. Apart from defining total factor productivity, can give some examples also how TFP can be increased. Just one example, like replacing flood irrigation with micro irrigation can enhance TFP. Why the example is needed is by giving that example, you can add value to your introduction. When it comes to the body of the answer, में क्या होना चाहिए first part? You should highlight what is the present status of TFP. When I say present status of TFP means you should write why, how multiple inputs in agriculture are overutilized. Which are those inputs in agriculture which are overutilized? Start with one, which is the most valuable input, land. Land followed by water. Water followed by labor, fertilizers, credit, and subsidies versus GCF. So you should write ki why they are overutilized. And after that, you have to give some solutions. That is one way to write it. So you can just see here. This is how you can write the definition. TFP measures the efficiency with which various inputs are utilized. It is measured as a ratio of agricultural output to agricultural input. Okay? When it comes to the body of the answer, the present status of doubling farmers' income, because वहां पे लिखा है the government vision of doubling farmers' income. After that, why the TFP is lower? You can speak in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And why the TFP is lower के बाद, what should we do to enhance the TFP? Did you get the point? Okay. What should be the conclusion? Dalwai panels. So you can see here, as highlighted by Dalwai panel, the adoption of above strategies will enable Indian agriculture to shift from production-centric approach to income-centric approach. Look at the keyword, like the way I've used. We should shift from production-centered to income-centered. Because mostly the Indian agriculture so far has been focusing on production and it has not given due focus on income. And thus realize the vision of doubling farmers' income as well as Viksit Bharat. Value addition, budget, case studies, committees, diagram, facts. Budget, I told you, agriculture should be used as a first engine of growth. That you can write while writing the strategies. Committee, Dalwai panel, India International Center report, or NABARD. Then all the facts that we covered. And you can also make a diagram here. When you write the present status of farmers' income, you can make a pie chart. In that pie chart, you can make a pie chart like this, a small pie chart, which basically shows what is the percentage of farm income, what is the percentage of non-farm income. Percentage of farm income is how much? 33%. Okay, that is how you should write. That's pie chart, graph, and some things. यहाँ तक clear है? Let's move to the next question. I'll share this PPT. Ensure that you're able to write according to the demand of the question. Was your demand of the question, the way you are structured, was it in similar lines or was there any major deviation? Anyone? किसी का major deviation था यहाँ से? हाँ, what he is trying to say, that's a good thing also. You can pick up one particular input, like land uthaya. Then write problems and then strategies. Water, problems, strategies, like the way I have done it. That is also one other way of doing it. You can make the diagram also. Yeah, you can do that. Look at this question quickly. 1 minute, structure the answer. What happened? It's not same. That is related to TFP alone. That is, when I said TFP means it is mostly related to inputs. This is much more broad based, all the challenges. And that was more challenges and strategies. यहाँ पे क्या है? हाँ. Done? What's your intro? Sorry? Directly Viksit Bharat? I think the present status of the income of the farmers. The question is not about Viksit Bharat. The question is about doubling farmers' income. The present status should be about income of the farmers, not about Viksit Bharat. That report, India International Center report, or NABARD's Financial Inclusion Survey report, the present status. Ensure that your intro is not very lengthy. हर जगह पे contribution लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है, because your intro should be maximum of 2 statements. So you already have 2 points to highlight about the status of the income of the farmers, है ना? Right? And when it comes to body of the answer, what is the part 1 of the body of the answer? So you have to explain that. The diagram you can make. Yeah. Between part 1 and part 2, where should be your major focus on? Challenges. And there only you have a lot of points to write. So keep the first part very, very short, very limited. Focus more on the second part. And I keep telling to you, whenever you write challenges in the body of the answer, immediately after the challenges आपको क्या लिखना है? Initiatives. But मैंने तो कुछ initiatives तो बताया नहीं आपको. But आपको तो पता होगा ना? You know some initiatives? What are those? Kisan Credit Card, Soil Health Card, PM Kusum, Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana. You know some schemes, right? SMAM, Submission on Agriculture Mechanization, about which we'll be covering. So you can just see here. Argue is not never the debate. Argue is you take a stand in the favor of the statement. It's one-sided. There's no debate about it. If the question is, do you think, critically analyze, then it is debatable. Do not get into the trap of discuss, analyze, examine. मैं कभी उस पे focus करता ही नहीं हूँ, because all of them mean the same thing. Do not worry about that. You know, if you see a lot of YouTube videos, they try to help you distinguish between examine, analyze, discuss, and so on. But never get into this trap of distinguishing between them. All of them would mean the same thing. The only thing you should know is critically analyze is a different perspective. Critically analyze means you have to write the pros, cons, and then take a stand. It's similar like, do you think? Never get into the trap. It's like one-sided, and whatever we covered now, the way I've covered, same way you have to cover it. What is the conclusion here? Conclusion is the Dalwai panel's statement. Indian agriculture must be treated as an enterprise and farmer as an agripreneur, with focus on reducing input costs, enhancing productivity, and ensuring higher prices for the farmers. Is that clear, everyone? Okay. Okay, so it's 5:30. We'll take 15 minutes break. And once we come back, we'll start with the theme of irrigation. Okay? Hmm.